Hi and welcome, and thanks for checking out the channel, and Happy New Year. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can get more business from attorneys, law firms, and other sources in 2022. And if you like this sort of content, then make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you're able to follow all the upcoming videos. Now, let's get into the presentation. So, before we can get into how you actually go about getting more business, I wanted to share three key points with you in the context of the drivers of success. And success here is defined simply as getting more business. The first point is where you are today. That will have an impact on how much business you will get and how quickly you will get it. Because if you are getting direct business, direct referrals, etc., from law firms and attorneys today, then it's generally much easier for you to get more business. If your business is just starting out, then obviously you have no existing relationships to leverage off of, very likely. So it will take you longer. And something else which is very common for professionals and companies in this space, if your business is derived from referrals from non-attorney sources, such as directories, panels and agencies, etc., then it will generally also be difficult for you to influence how much business you get and leverage that business that you're getting from those sources, simply because you don't own these relationships. You're not in control. Someone else owns the relationships and they simply refer you the business. That business could dry up very quickly and potentially you could get more business, but either way, it's outside of your control. So the best thing is to have direct referrals and direct business coming in from attorneys and law firms. That way you're able to leverage off of those relationships and possibly get more business. Now, the second point is how much work you put in and the quality of that work. Because if you are putting in a lot of work, then generally that means that you're able to maximize the possibilities, everything else being equal. And obviously, if you put in less work, then it's going to take longer for you. And you want to make sure that this work isn't bursts of efforts. You want to make sure that you do the work continuously over time. That way, you're creating the best possible conditions for you to get more business. The second point here is that you need to have quality in your work, obviously, because it's very easy to just get busy, but the activities that you're focusing on may or may not actually produce any real results. So you want to make sure that you focus on the things that actually matter. And that's what we're going to be talking about here in this presentation today. And finally, it comes down to the duration of your efforts, because if you just do, even if it's quality work and you have the best type of relationships to leverage off, it doesn't really matter if you're just doing this for a very short period of time. So you want to make sure that you do quality work, you do a lot of work, consistent work, and you do it over time. That way you're able to get more business, more leads, more opportunities, and it will kind of have a snowball effect, starting off slow at first and then building up over time. So that's kind of the background to what we're dealing with. So let's talk about how you can get more business. Now, it may be surprising, but how much business you get generally has very little to do with how many panels and directories you're on, how many diplomas that you have, where you had your education, etc., etc., etc. People tend to think that that matters a great deal, but very often it doesn't. What tends to matter the most is your general visibility and your network. Now, obviously, these are two areas that we can probably fill an entire presentation about. That's not the topic of today's conversation, but we're going to drill down into this a little bit more. Just to sort of explain it in brief, visibility comes down to you being, first of all, noticed by your target audience, or the individuals and companies that will provide you with business, and then how well you stay on top of mind. The second part, the network, really comes down to what existing connections that you have today that you can make the most of in terms of drumming up new business. And secondly, how you're able to expand your network with relevant parties. So let's talk a little bit further about that. Before we can talk about actual activities, the first thing that you need to do is understand your ecosystem and your target audience. Now, what does that mean? Well, the ecosystem is really the arena in which you operate in, all the entities and individuals that can either directly or indirectly influence how much new business that you get or how much business that you get altogether. And your target audience or target audiences, because you can have several, is really, again, the entities and individuals that can provide you with this business. And before you're able to devise a strategy for extracting business and creating opportunities, you really need to know who you're dealing with. And we see a lot of people just basically doing what everybody else is doing. Whatever their peers are doing, they're just following suit. They're communicating in the same way. And maybe they're even communicating with their potential clients the same way that they're communicating with their peers. So you want to make sure that you take this one step further and just ask yourself, who is it that can provide you with business? Who are these entities and individuals? And what is it that they care about? Where can you find them, both on and offline? And also look at how they make decisions. Why do they work with someone? Or why would they work with someone such as yourself? Why do they work with your competitors? And once you've answered those questions, you're going to have a pretty good understanding of how to develop your own strategy. And that's why once that's done, we can take it one step further and start looking at actual activities. So just to simplify here, we will classify these activities in 4 different areas. The first one is the static activities. It may not be entirely as static as you think. So you're not going to be sitting back in the armchair while developing that channel, but it is a little bit more passive than the other activities, at least. So the second one is the active area. And we'll get into exactly what all of this means very shortly. Then we've got the expanding area, and that's more focused on your network. And then finally, we've got the leveraging area, again, that's geared towards your network. So let's drill down further into this. When it comes to the static area, that really revolves around your online presence, such as social media, your website, and any other channel where you frequent. Also your offline presence, because, well, you could simply be featured in articles, you could have written a book, etc., etc. So there's many offline areas where you also can be visible. When it comes to the active area, that's focused on your communication. What you post on social media, what you post in other online areas, and also what kind of activities and visibility that you have in the offline space. So all of this is really geared towards visibility in general. The expanding area is geared towards, as I mentioned, your network, how you grow your network and how you grow your network with relevant parties. Relevant parties is generally not your peers, because they're not going to be sending you business. And we see this a lot. People network with their peers. What you should be doing is networking with individuals that can provide you with business and that you can help, obviously, providing your services and creating value. The fourth and final area is the leveraging area, and that comes down to making the most of your existing set of connections. So looking at these 4 areas, the reason why it often becomes quite complicated in this space, getting business from attorneys and law firms, is that quality information is very hard to come by. So if you just look at these 4 areas, the static area, it's pretty easy to find quality information, because you will have individuals that can build your website, they can help you with setting up your LinkedIn profile, etc., etc. They don't really need to be specialists in how to speak to attorneys. When it comes to the active area, again, it's reasonably easy to find help, because there are many specialists that work with how you communicate on LinkedIn, how you communicate on Twitter, how you sort of make your website rank, etc., etc. It's a little bit more difficult than when it comes to the static area, but still there is help to find in this space. Now, where it becomes a little bit more challenging is the expanding and the leveraging areas, because there are very few specialists when it comes to doing this kind of sophisticated networking and contact cultivation with attorneys. Most professionals are generalists, so they wouldn't know how to help you with approaching these two areas. And for you to be able to do this successfully in 2022 and beyond, you want to make sure that you have a coherent strategy which covers all four areas and doing it really in a harmonized way. So let's talk a little bit more about what actual activities that this revolves around and how it all sort of links together. What's more prioritized than other areas here? Because again, there's very common misunderstandings when it comes to what's important and what isn't important. And we'll have a look at that here on the slide. Now, when it comes to the static area, I sort of explained it a little bit, but just to reiterate, that really revolves around your LinkedIn profile, because for many professionals, that really is the main source of your visibility together with your website. But it may also be other social media depending on who you target, and different kinds of listings where you are visible. Now, this could be Google My Business, or it could be Yelp. For some, those two areas are completely irrelevant, but just to give you a sense of what we're talking about here. Now, when it comes to the active area, we are dealing with writings of different kinds, such as blogs, social media postings. Maybe you're writing a column of some sort, maybe you're writing books, maybe there's articles, maybe you're teaching, but also different kinds of interactions and activities. Maybe you're participating in panels, maybe you're speaking at events, so everything in that arena. Very often, people will think that the static and active areas are the most important. And that kind of comes back to what I showed you on the previous slide. It's very hard to find quality information about how to do the expanding and leveraging areas, which is why people tend to focus on the static and active. So they will post on LinkedIn and they will do all kinds of trainings and get certifications, but they see very little results. They're not getting more business that way. And that's because very often these are just supporting areas. They're supporting you with staying on top of mind, and in some cases also you becoming noticed, but rarely will it generate actual business. So what really generates the business is what your network looks like today, and if you're able to leverage that network to get more business. And also how you're able to expand your network. Whether your network is very small today or it's very large, you're always going to have to pay attention to continuously expanding your network with relevant parties. And that's really where you're going to see the most bang for your buck. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at these two areas. So when it comes to the expanding area, what we're really looking at here is for you to connect with entities and individuals that can provide you with business directly and indirectly. Once you know your target audiences, this shouldn't be all that difficult because you know whom to approach, you know how to communicate with them, et cetera, et cetera. And then it also comes down to maintaining contact, because most people won't even consciously develop a strategy for expanding their network. But if they do, those activities will very often just be bursts. Someone finds a contact list and decides to email 1,000 people and gets few to no responses at all. And they're confused about that and disappointed with the activity and thinks that it doesn't work. Well, I guess we can only look at ourselves. How likely are we to respond when we get that kind of non-personalized email blast? I think we all receive that almost on a daily basis. And I, for one, respond to probably no one. So there needs to be much more to that strategy. When it comes to the leveraging space, what we're dealing with here is just to make sure, first of all, that you deliver value to your network, to your contacts, whether that is just doing a good job or something else. It could be both within a business and a non-business context. So once you deliver value, then your network is going to be able to network for you. And that's really pure gold if you're able to get to that level with your key contacts and clients. And what I'm sort of talking about here is not for you to go and scream the loudest, to become noticed and really pester people and be annoying. Not anything like that. This is a much more nuanced approach because we're dealing with a professional target audience that is busy, and they probably have high expectations of how you should act to be able to get business from them. So screaming and shouting and pestering people, that is not going to be what leads to business for you. So what is going to lead to business is really for you to have a coherent strategy that you deploy over time. So you need to know your ecosystem, first of all, the entities, individuals that can provide you with business. You also need to know your audience or audiences. What is it that they're interested in? How should you be communicating with them? You need to have a message that resonates. So when you communicate with people, both on and offline, you need to be able to convey what you're all about and make it easy for them to remember it. As with anything here, we're dealing with relationships, and most people are going to be not interested or too busy to look at something right now, or it won't be the right time, which means that if your sample size is very small, over the course of a year, you only try to connect with 10 new individuals, then chances are that you're not going to be successful with those interactions. So you need to scale that up. And you also need to do your work consistently over time, because Rome wasn't built in one day. And again, bursts of effort is generally much less effective than doing something consistently. You also need to allow for time, because again, you're not going to be able to cultivate relationships from scratch. You need to allow for a certain amount of time for that to happen. And for you to be able to be successful with that, again, these bursts of effort won't work. One touch type of activity, sending an email to someone or cold calling someone, that is generally not going to be that effective. So you need to have proper contact cultivation. So hopefully this gives you some ideas for making the most of your business in 2022. I hope you enjoyed this content. And again, if you liked it, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and make sure that you tune in for the next one. Thank you very much for listening in.